Seasonal wrap-up game today. This is going to be the spring edition. This is where I answer about 10 to 12 different random questions as a way to review and share with you my highlights of my reading for the past 3 months. So during the spring, I participated in quite a few different readathons, and I read a variety of different books, which helped me discover a bunch of new authors, especially new artists. I read mainly nonfiction and historical fiction, which quite a few of them were very emotional reads for me just because of the heavy subject matter. But they were still so full of hope and humor, which are some of the things I look for in a good story. So grab your favorite cup of beverage of choice and let's get started. The first question is, talk about the author from the 6th book you read this past spring. So the 6th book I read was Emily the Traveling Guinea Pig, which is a series by one of my favorite authors, Emma Smith. Emma Smith was the pen name for English author Elspeth Hall Smith, and she wrote a variety of different books, mainly children's books, but she wrote short stories and novels, but I think she's mainly famous and well known for her series of memoirs, the first one being Maiden's Trip. Maiden's Trip is her account of the time she volunteered and worked for the Grand Union Canal as an 18-year-old during World War II. And this really was her first taste of freedom as a young woman. And the crew was mainly made up of similar aged women, as all the men were away at war. And this just tells of the mishaps and adventures that they endure together, and it's a wonderful read, and it's a perfect one to pick up now that it's summertime. The next question is, what is the newest book on your completed reading list? And that would be this adorable one, Belly Full of Heart, written and illustrated by Madeline Mouse. And this is one my sister and I picked up, let me show you some illustrations, at a really wonderful independent bookstore called Books with Pictures. It's over in Southeast Portland, and they give us this fantastic bookmark. I just love it. Oh, and I guess there's a location over in Eugene as well. But I just love Madeline's playful, exuberant, whimsical art style. And this is an adorable queer love story. It is not intended for children. It does have some graphic bits in it. But I love, let me show you some of my favorite illustrations. I want this framed. I just love it. Here's another favorite one. I'll read to you. It says, I now bestow upon you an impenetrable force field. It will surround you with love, protection, and wisdom. It will guide you home after a hard day and keep you warm when it's cold. It will tuck you into bed. It will keep the bad dreams away and bring you spicy lemon cayenne tea when you're sick. The force field will diminish over time, and you may believe it has completely disappeared, But if you just close your eyes and think really hard about someone you love, full force, it will come rushing back, ready for distribution. And it came with stickers. That was a delightful bookish surprise. The next question is, what was one of your top reads this spring that helped you complete the Read What You Own challenge? That would be Hurricane Child by trans author Kacen Callender. This was such a stunning middle grade debut. It was brutal. It had me bawling. It's about a queer black girl, Caroline Murphy, who is struggling. She's growing up in the Virgin Islands with her father, and she is in search of her mother, who she believes has abandoned them to travel the world, and she receives these postcards every so often of the different locations she's been to. It's about her painful challenges and her triumphs. It's about her first friend that she makes in school, where she's horribly bullied, not only by her peers but by her teacher. And it's just written with so much tenderness and honesty and love, and it's one of my favorite books I've read so far this year. I immediately put all of Kacen Callender's books on hold at the library. I loved this book so much. It contains everything I enjoy in a good story. There's poetry within the lines there. It's a book about identity and self-discovery, speaking and living your truth so you can be honest with those you love. The next question is, which book shared a common theme? I think the biggest common themes of these last 3 months have been about connections across time, and particularly love and family. Pretty much the majority of the books I read involved storylines about the bonds that we create within our found family units, and about the need for reconciliation and connection between children and their biological parents. For example, I think a book that beautifully executed this was The Emperor of Gladness by Ocean Vuong. I had to buy a physical copy of this. I listened to it on audiobook, and I fell in love with Ocean Vuong's writing. I feel the relationship between the protagonist, Hai, and his mother, even though it's fraught and challenging, it's grounded in his fear of being a disappointment, or even of being seen as a failure in his mother's eyes. And she doesn't even really put that pressure on him. I think he puts that pressure on himself as a first generation Vietnamese American. And it asks really deep questions about such as what is the American dream, what does that look like, and is it ever really attainable? And this relationship is juxtaposed with the intense friendship that he has with Grzynia, who is a 78-year-old Polish immigrant who has dementia, and really mirrors his own relationship that he had with his Vietnamese grandmother, where there was just this innate understanding and judgment. And so, yeah, I just think it was such that relationship, those relationships made for a very interesting read. And just, I've always been fascinated with just how children have, there's just, I don't know how to describe it, but it's almost as if we're drawn to our grandparents more than our own parents. I know I definitely was when I was younger. In my middle grade books was the characters were searching for their birth mothers, and this happened in Hurricane Child, and it also happened in Rooftoppers by Katherine Rundell. And this tells the story of a girl at the turn of the century who's found floating in the ocean inside a cello case, and is adopted by the gentleman who finds her, and he helps her flee to France. Another great read that explored similar themes was Everything We Never Had by Ribay, and this explores the complexities of father and son relationships, particularly intergenerational trauma and healing. And I'll talk a little bit more about this one at a later question. The next question is, what was the most heartwarming reads of the season? That would probably have to be all the books that I read for the Picture This Readathon in April. This is a lovely readathon that celebrates children's literature, and it's hosted by wonderful content creators Jack from Spread Book Joy and Shelley Swearingen. I dedicated pretty much every evening in April to reading a children's book, whether that was with my nieces or if it was sometimes it was just for my own pleasure and joy. And I don't think I have time in this video to go over every single one, so I'll just talk about 3. I revisited a lot of books that were read to me during my childhood, such as Mufaro's Beautiful Daughters, that was written and gorgeously illustrated by John Steptoe. This is a Zimbabwean folk tale and is where the European Cinderella originates from. Another one from my childhood that I reread was Mirandy and Brother Wind by Patricia C. McKissack, and it's also gorgeously illustrated by Jerry Pinkney. And this is about a little girl, Mirandy, who, just look at these illustrations, I just love them, who is going to be participating in her very first cakewalk competition, and there's nothing more that she wants than to win this competition. And she gets the idea in her head that if she is able to capture Brother Wind, she will win this competition because she's going to make him dance with her. And so it's just about her clever traps that she comes up with. One that I read for the first time is Digging for Words, Jose Alberto Gutierrez and the Library He Built. This is written by Angela Burke Kunkel and illustrated by Paola Escobar. Just want to show you the illustrations so that you can see, but there's so many beautiful people in this world, and I think Jose Alberto Gutierrez is one of them. Let me show you his real picture. This is about Jose was a sanitation worker in Colombia, and on his nightly routes he would come across books that were intended to be thrown out in the trash, and instead of doing that he would save them and rescue them, and he basically changed his life as well as the lives of his community by turning his house into a public library, essentially. Today he directs his own foundation. It's called La Fuerza de las Palabras, the Strength of Words, and this organization provides books and various other materials to schools across Colombia. And yeah, I love stories like this. Yeah, so those were some of my most heartwarming reads of the spring. The next question is, what is a book that is under the radar and needs more love? That would be one that I listened to, Everything We Never Had by Ribay. It has under it had like 550 reviews on Storygraph, which I think is a shame because it's such a poignant and moving story about intergenerational trauma that really feeds into the complexities and intricacies of contemporary life, and family dynamics and relationships between fathers and sons, which I think is, no matter what your cultural background is quite universal. And we specifically follow the male line, I think 4 generations of of a multiracial Filipino-American family. It begins in the late 1920s in California with the murder of a Filipino agricultural worker, and it goes up till the COVID pandemic, and it's really under the forced quarantine that this family begins to shed light into their generations of misunderstandings, and that barrier gets broken down, and it's a quite beautiful story, really, and it was very informative. There was a lot of American history that I wasn't familiar with. The next question is, did you read any local authors this spring? Yes, I did. I read an amazing YA novel called Piecing Me Together by local author Renee Watson. I also read some of her picture books. Piecing Me Together is set here in Portland, and our protagonist, Jade, is an African-American sophomore in high school, and she wants nothing more than to become a famous photographer and collage artist. And you see her struggles and her triumphs as she learns to cope and deal with being raised by a single parent. She really has to grow up quickly, and she's dealing with some shame and guilt because she has received a scholarship to attend an elite private school in the city. And there's a lot of heavy subject matter in this one as well, such as police brutality and racism, which changes Jade's life, and particularly when she gets assigned to a mentor that she doesn't want in her life either. I highly recommend this one, especially if you're not a big fan of YA. I typically am not, but I really enjoyed this one. The next question is, spring often symbolizes growth and change. Did you read any books that contain such themes? Pretty much all the books that I read explore such themes. One that I haven't mentioned yet is one called At Home in a Faraway Place by Lynn Ray Perkins. And this one's about a young girl who spends a summer away with her family in Peru, where her grandmother is from, and it's where her dad grew up. And it's about the immense culture shock and homesickness she experiences. And with the help of her grandmother, she slowly comes to the realization that home is what you make of it. And it's about just even though she's far from home, there's still qualities and familiarity of that home that she finds in the people she meets. And it's a really, really charming one. The next question is, who was a favorite female character? So there was a lot, and it's hard to choose just one, but one I can't not say Grisinia from The Emperor of Gladness. I don't know how to describe Grisinia other than that she has a heart of gold, and they find one another when they're at their most vulnerable, and it's just so full of trust and humility. And the majority of Grisinia's dialogue I bookmarked. I just found Ocean Vuong's words that he gave to her so beautiful and so soulful. And yeah, this was another one that was quite emotional of a read for me. And I'd never heard of Ocean Vuong before. I think in passing, my sister mentioned his book of poetry. And yeah, I'm definitely going to be seeking out more of his work, particularly his poetry, because I loved his dialogue, and his descriptions in that novel were stunning. The next question is, what was your most satisfying book to read this season? That is hard. That would be My Garden Book by Jamaica Kincaid, who is another favorite author of mine. I believe this one was illustrated by Jill Fox. Jamaica Kincaid grew up on the island of Antigua, and this, I wouldn't necessarily call it a memoir. It's more of a collection of meditations on gardening and essays about, her first experience gardening, which, all started with a little packet, which was a Mother's Day gift from her husband, and she knew nothing about gardening. And so it's all about her trials and tribulations and coming to terms with how colonialism has shaped the flowers that she grows in her own gardens. And you hear about her first time attending the Chelsea Flower Show, and her dreams for her then future garden at her house in Vermont. A lovely accompaniment just to dip in and out of throughout the spring, when everything's starting to wake up and you get to plan for the next growing season. So yeah, this one I highly recommend if you like nonfiction. And then the final question is, choose a book and pair it with a piece of art. So the book I want to talk about for this question is Kira Kira, which is a lovely middle grade book set in the 1950s. It follows the middle child of a Japanese family. I believe her name's Katie, and the title means shining or glittering in Japanese. And the way Katie sees her oldest sister is very epitomizes this word. She's sort of the golden child, and she has a very special friendship and bond with Katie, and Katie, of course, looks up to her big sister, who has a way of just making everything about the world fascinating, and it just feeds into Katie's curiosity. The piece of art that I want to pair with Kira Kira is called Fireflies on the Water by Yayoi Kusama. This is an installation piece that you can experience for yourself at the Whitney Museum, and it's essentially a small, tiny room that has a pool of water in the center, and Yayoi has set it up where there's a bunch of mirrors. This little room is lined with mirrors that, when lit, makes it look as though you are surrounded by fireflies. And I think this piece of evocative art pairs well with this lovely book. So those were some reading highlights from my spring. Please let me know what you've been reading lately, and I'd love to know your thoughts on any of these books if you've read them yourself. I hope your summer is off to a grand start, and again, thanks so much for being here and for watching this little video. I'll see you again next time. Take good care. Bye-bye.